Hey, friend. So good to see you. Happy Wednesday. I hope wherever you are that you are joining us in the world, you will do us a favor. You will lean in, you will put those fingers on your keyboard, and you will say hi in the chat because we already have me and Jeff and Giacomo and Jim and Shelby chatting it up and letting us know what is in each other's cups, what's our caffeine of choice for today, and what we're digging into. If you are listening to this on your favorite podcast network while you are washing the dishes or walking the dog or maybe doing some errands around town, no worries. We will make it feel like you are right here with us live. We will hold you in our arms so that you can feel like you're right here with us in this cozy coffee shop, our virtual cozy coffee shop, leaning in together. If it's your first time joining us, then welcome. I like to think that we're a pretty fun bunch around these parts. We get together every single week to learn from each other, get all the best tips and tactics and hacks, things that are working for us, and more importantly, things that are working for the experts, the CEOs, the founders, the celebrities that we are talking to. And today is absolutely no different. I know that James and Liz and David and a bunch of people that regularly join us, this will not be a surprise to them at all, but I love to nerd out. So that's number one. And number two, I love to try to maximize the amount of time that I have. We've all heard the phrase that, the most precious possession, the thing that we cannot buy more of or get more of or barter more of or negotiate for more of is time. Doesn't matter how rich you are. It doesn't matter where you are located. Our most valuable asset that we all share across any way you cut it is time. And so really looking at time and how to make the most of it, how to be our most productive selves, how to play hard, but work hard all at once. And juggling all that is a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. And I can pretty much assume it's also pretty near and dear to your heart as well. And so when we think about this subject, and I was wandering around, nerding out like I do, I came across Brad, and hopefully you have also done some Google stalking of Brad. But what I love so much, so I'll give you like a little TLDR, a little too long, didn't read in case you didn't do your homework before you showed up today. But Brad is really an expert in studying time management. And not just like, you see people on like TikTok or Instagram who are like, oh, I specialize in time management. No, my friends, like a PhD in time management, like actually studied, like has studies, has been prominently featured on the BBC and the Harvard Business Review, like legitimately studies productivity, stress reduction, how we can make the most of our time. And so it was no surprise that, he's just full of amazing information on this subject, but more so like the extra nerdy hack that I was super into is he really started kind of getting in and sharing his expertise specifically on AI and how AI can help us even more when it comes to productivity and our time management. So I hope that you've got lots of questions. I know I have a lot of questions for him too, but wherever you are, I hope you will help me welcome Brad to our coffee chat. Hi, Brad.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it.
How's it going?
Doing pretty well. It's finally sunny up here in Canada. It was, I don't know about you, but it was the weather was kind of like uncooperative, very rainy, a little cold. It's often cold in Canada, but colder than usual. So yeah, a little bit of sun. It's to me is one of the best ways to spend your time. So.
All I know is we are going to have lots of sunshine in this conversation today because like Mark and Aaron and everybody's saying, like, we are so excited to kind of nerd out and deep dive with you all about time management, but specifically AI. And I'm just curious because obviously, you heard me say a little bit in the intro. There's a lot of people now, whether you're on TikTok or Instagram or any of these social media platforms, that are talking about like hacks and saving time. But with a PhD, you've actually been like knee deep in the actual research and science behind this subject. And I'm just curious, out of all the things that little Brad could have picked to study in high school or middle school or college, even, like, what led you to time management?
That's a great question. Well, when I was in high school and college, I found it very hard to manage the workload, the studying and also managing a part-time job. So I thought, let's go to the bookstore and read some time management slash productivity books, and they were very helpful, but some of them were particularly unhelpful, and in the sense that you can tell that they're very sometimes generic. They don't apply to everyone, and they were just not very like you couldn't, just by reading the book you can't tell whether that's something that's going to apply to you, something that's not going to apply to you. We'll all have different lives. Some of us work from home. Some of us have a long commute. Some people have kids. Some people don't have kids. And so, based on that alone, your time management strategies are going to be very different. And so I thought, what do we know about time management that we can reliably use? And so I turned to research. And when I was doing my master's, I was astonished to realize that there's actually not that much research, scientific research on time management. So I thought, you know what, let's explore this. Um, and I really like this idea that you can develop evidence-based, research-backed strategies that you're at least a little more confident that they're going to work for you, for most people. And that makes a huge difference. A life of time managed well is usually a life not only that is not only productive, but also um, usually more meaningful, uh, happier, and more purposeful. And so I think there's that important component of time management that people forget about, this idea that if you align your day-to-day life with things that you value, it could be, caring for a child, fighting for a cause that is important to you, of course your life is going to be more meaningful and purposeful. And that's ultimately, to me at least, the end goal of time management. Sure, you can be more productive, but at the end of the day, you also have to make sure that whatever it is that you do with your time counts and matters.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. I feel like it's one of those things that, the more control that you have over your time, the better. And one of the things that I think I've been really curious with lately, and, I feel like talking to you is kind of like talking to George Jetson. You're kind of from the future. And what I mean by that is I feel like just now all of us are discovering things like, Claude and ChatGPT, but like, you're way ahead of us. Like, you've already been on this game for years. And so I'm just curious, like, for all of those of us who are kind of not the Brads of the world, we're the later adopters of these techniques, what are some things that you're noticing now that newer people to AI are really starting to dig into and learn more of?
That's a great question. So, if you don't mind, one thing I would like to perhaps acknowledge is that yes, I did a PhD on the topic of time management and productivity, and I think that some people see that as a um, indication that my life is perfect and well managed. But one thing I want to make very clear is that time management is very hard for everyone, including myself. Uh, it is no easy feat because essentially time management is about how you want to live your life day by day, despite all of the chaos that might happen. And that is very challenging, again, including to myself. So if you find it hard to manage your time to be productive, me too. So don't worry, that's very normal. And now to answer your question, yes, I've been very interested in AI since at least 2018. So way before ChatGPT, because to me, it was very clear almost immediately that that would play a role in productivity. Now, to your specific question, I think a lot of people have adopted ChatGPT in their day-to-day use, what I see is that a lot of people focus on what I call operational productivity, meaning that they use ChatGPT to do things that speed up execution, like write this email for me or summarize this text for me. And that's amazing because that gives you a little bit more time to breathe, to just manage your workload. But that's the operational side of things. One thing that I'm very interested in is the concept of cognitive productivity, meaning that there's a lot of to me, the main bottleneck when people manage their time and their productivity is, what do I do? It's a mindset thing. So sometimes the main bottleneck is, what do I do next? Do I do this task or that other task? What would really move the needle? I'm kind of stuck between these two options. Um, I feel like I've been stuck in a rut for the past 6 months or so, but I don't know what the problem is. And so it's almost like therapy meets productivity. And I think that's what AI does really, really, really well. So think of it as a therapist slash personal productivity coach, where you can say things like, "Hey, I've been feeling very um, anxious lately, and so that has been impacting my productivity. I don't know what that's due to." And then the AI might say something, might prod you to say something like, "Well, can you tell me more? What is it that you do day after day? What's the feel? Can you name the feeling?" And then you realize, "Oh, I'm anxious because this task is actually much bigger than I thought, or maybe this task is not aligned with my values." And that's a much deeper conversation than, "How do I do this faster?"
Well, and I love this idea of really kind of helping it, like Aaron says, helping you come up with also an approach to doing your tasks, your daily tasks. Like one of the things that I've realized, not this is, before ChatGPT, also just for myself, but now I can kind of lean into it more with the help of ChatGPT, is talking about my week. So saying, okay, I'm going to be flying on Tuesday, Thursday, of this week, which means I'm going to be in airports, which means I'm not going to be productive. But here are the 5 big goals for the week. So help me kind of figure out and by the way, I work better in the morning than I do at night. So, don't give me the advice that once you get to the hotel at 10 p.m., work on that proposal, because I know myself, not happening. And so the ChatGPT will kind of be able to help me kind of figure out how to structure my day based on, one, my personality type and kind of how I work best, and two, just based on what I have going on that week. So I definitely think in terms of, using it to help you think about the concepts themselves instead of just doing the work is super helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, I think it takes a little bit of self-knowledge that you have to share with the AI. Like you said, the AI might share some generic type of advice that will not work for you, such as, "Hey, how about you work on that when you get to the hotel?" Well, I'm not an evening person; I'm more of a morning person, type of thing. So that's not going to work for me. And so it's very important as you do that to give your AI as much context as possible. So here's who I am. Here's my current situation, my age, the type of job I do, the type of work I do, and the more context you give, the more fine tuned the solution or the recommendations will be. An easy way to do that, so that you don't have to do it over and over again, is that if you're using ChatGPT, and I'm using ChatGPT as an example here because it's by far the most widely used AI. If you go to the settings, there's in the personalization section, you can enable memory. And there's a long-term memory feature that is, I think, just a few months old now, that will essentially look at all of your chats and kind of develop a more or less accurate model of who you are and respond accordingly. And I find that very useful for a lot of people who don't have the time to every time reprompt, "Hey, here's who I am." For instance, my mother-in-law, who's 66 now, finds that amazing because every time she has a problem, like, "Oh, my car has this particular problem," or, "I'm torn. Should I move? Should I don't know, buy a new apartment? Should I rent a new apartment?" The AI answers accordingly, meaning it answers in a way that is that works for someone of her age, someone with her fears, her concerns, her anxieties. And I find that amazing because then AI is not just a tool; it is a personal productivity assistant.
100%. And I know you've been talking about ChatGPT specifically, but I'm just curious. I have friends that they swear by Claude. It's a little bit of like, if you have straight hair, you want curly hair. If you have curly hair, you want wavy hair. Like, do you have, I mean, obviously, I'm sure you've kind of played with all of the different ones. Do you have one that you think stands out when it comes to time management and productivity, or do you feel like all of them are like pretty decent no matter which one you use, as long as you prompt it the right way, like you're going to be okay?
Um, I would probably agree with the latter. As long as you prompt them accordingly, for 95% of use cases, you're going to be just fine. The main difference that I see is mostly in terms of execution. So uh, the operational productivity. So, for instance, if I want to write something that is longer, something research related, I found that Claude is a little more human in the way it
Mm.
writes. And so I like that tone a little better than ChatGPT. I like using ChatGPT for things that are more reasoning intensive. So I'm thinking very hard about a problem. I find that their reasoning models like O3 and as of yesterday, O3 Pro are really good at finding solutions to very, very tough problems.
Yeah, no, I feel like it really is a little bit of like playing with the platforms and kind of figuring out what's going to work the best. For somebody that is, very new to this idea of time management, what do you think is like a really good sort of first actionable 101 step? It can use AI or not, but when it comes to kind of evaluating like where you currently are or where there are areas to improve when it comes to your own productivity?
That's a great question. I think most people struggle with time management, but it's not necessarily the time aspect that is an issue. It's mostly the amount of stuff we have to constantly juggle, and that means information. So, for instance, I don't know, you're writing your job requires you to write a report that requires reading a lot of stuff, memorizing a lot of stuff. You're planning a birthday party for your kid that also requires all kinds of coordination, keeping track of things, the birthday cake, the birthday planning, the invitations. Um, and that's the reality of today. You just have to manage a lot of information rather than time. Time, sure, I mean, it hasn't really changed for the past tens of thousands of years, but the amount of information we have to manage certainly has changed. Like if you look at our great, 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 great grandparents, um, well, a lot of them did not even or could not even read. And so most of the information that you have to process is you wake up, you work on a farm, maybe you hear a little bit of gossip and stories, but that's about it. There's no texts and social media notifications and emails and this and that. So one thing I would recommend to people is to offload. We keep a lot of information in our brain that we do not necessarily have to keep. Um, the scientific term is cognitive offloading. So, how do we get rid of information that is important, but not necessarily important for us to keep in the back of our mind? And there's many ways you can do that. For instance, you have a lot of appointments, a lot of reminders. You can use a calendar for that. You have a lot of information to remember about particular projects, whether personal or professional. There's a lot of tools for that, like OneNote, Notion, Evernote, tons and tons of ways you can deal with that. But the principle is what's most important. The principle is, what do I need to use my brain for? And most of the time,
Mhm.
it's better to use your brain to think about stuff rather than just to remember and track stuff. That alone, that principle alone, will not only make you more productive, more reliable, but also a lot less overwhelmed.
Yeah, and I feel like that's the biggest, brain dumping for sure. Like Jen just said, don't keep it all up in your working memory. Just kind of like get it out as much as possible. I also love that most people may or may not know with ChatGPT, there is also a feature where you can press the little microphone and just talk into it. So while you're brushing your teeth or whether you are walking around, you can literally just brain dump, not even typing, just talking into it, which I think is extremely helpful and can reduce anxiety. It can help you prioritize what you need to get done first, like low level tasks, high level tasks, all that good stuff, which I just feel like is really kind of juicy and helpful. Have you found any insights, or do you have any like tips or tricks that you can share with us when it comes to leveraging AI for productivity, but specifically in the workplace? So maybe not so much planning your kid's birthday party or, figuring out what your to-dos are going to look like over the weekend, but specifically in like a work context, whether you're working at a corporate job or whether you're, working as a consultant or entrepreneur even.
That's a great question. One thing that I love about AI as a tool is that it's not a tool. For instance, if you want to master Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, it can only do what it's programmed to do. So there's not much you can use it for except for formulas, writing documents, and so on. The beauty of AI is that it's almost like talking to someone. So for instance, if you don't know how to do something, you ask the AI. And this is perhaps a bit meta, but this is one of the more useful use cases for AI, is if you don't know how to use AI for a particular aspect of your job, then ask the AI.
Yeah.
So you prompt it with a very, again, detailed description of who you are, your current job, but also, here's my problem at work. Here's a very detailed description of what I struggle with, some areas for improvement. What do you recommend based on what I told you? And that's where you start what I call the escape, the leap forward. Instead of being stuck in the same thing where you don't know what the way forward is, well, AI helps you at least figure out what you can do. The other thing that I guess is a little more specific is whenever you're working a corporate job of any kind, one thing that I find very interesting is sometimes you can take a screenshot of whatever it is you're trying to do, whether you're using Excel, Word, Gmail. Just take a screenshot of what you're trying to do and ask the AI, is there any way I can automate this? And that has been extremely useful for a lot of people because A, very often we don't know that process can be automated, and B, we don't know how it can be automated. And so just asking those two questions makes a huge difference. To give you an example, a friend of mine who wanted to stay up to date on news related to a particular marketing topic because that's his job. And what he would do is peruse all the I guess magazines and news and specialized journals in that particular field. But of course, that takes a lot of time, multiple hours a week, until AI recommended, hey, have you thought of automated Google News alerts? And that's what he did. And of course, every week now he gets a weekly digest of the top news articles that are extremely relevant to him without having to do the perusing every week. So that saves him a few hours a week. So this is just one example of, hey, AI, this is my problem. Is this in any way automatable? Yes or no? And if it is, can you please help me figure out how to do it?
Totally. I love kind of building on that, this question that we just got. It says, I love the idea of planning based on real behavior, not just optimism. In a leadership role, how do you recommend applying this AI-based approach to team time management, especially across departments who all have very different work styles, which is, again, such a good point to bring up. And I know that for like a lot of people, that is very real. I can just speak for myself even. My business partner, Abby, is on the East Coast. I'm in Central Time. So she's already an hour ahead of me. That's number one. And number two, she's also an early bird. So she's up at 6 a.m. East Coast, which is, 5 a.m. my time, which means by the time I actually wake up at, call it 7:30, she's already been like, she worked out, she ate breakfast, she's at the computer, and she's been popping out emails to me for 45 minutes. Meanwhile, like my teeth aren't even brushed yet. So I'm glad we're digging into this because I totally think there's something here, especially, in a post-COVID world where everybody has different departments and people are located in different places. And thus, your work styles are super different.
That's a great question. So there's a long and short answer. The long answer is very specific. So essentially, what you want, especially when dealing with multiple people, is something that puts that brings everyone on the same page. So essentially, you need a tool for team management. Um, there's a lot of tools for that. As you probably know, there's Trello, there's Asana. My personal favorite is ClickUp, and the reason why I like ClickUp is because it has a workload capacity management feature where, depending on each team member's capacity, I guess preferences in terms of morning versus evening, time zone differences, you can organize all of that in a way that is very explicit and visible to everyone. And that is important because if we organize things around just let's talk about it and let's see how it goes, people tend to forget. People tend to forget important things like what we agreed on. We agreed that you would do this at a certain time, but when it's explicit, you have no way of saying, well, we never talked about that. The other thing that's very interesting about tools like ClickUp and more tools like you know different project management tools, depending on what you find easy to use, is that more and more of them use AI. I
Yeah.
personally use ClickUp, and there's a thing called ClickUp Brain where you can just click on it and say, based on the hundreds of tasks that I have to do, what do you think makes most sense to work on right now? And then it's going to work its magic. And
Mhm.
oh, you know what? Well, you were doing this research project on prioritization, and that sounds like something that interests you, has a lot of value. So maybe you should work on that today, especially in the morning where your, I guess, uh, brain capacity is at its peak. So that's my recommendation to you. Make things explicit for everyone and be mindful of everyone's workload capacity.
1,000%. I want to make sure we touch on Giacomo's question because he specifically, I know you mentioned ClickUp. We personally use Notion. There's a lot of different ones out there. I've never heard of NotebookLM. I don't know if you've heard of that.
So NotebookLM is this product by Google where I guess its claim to fame was this ability to just upload very long documents. So for those of you who are not familiar with AI terminology, there's a thing called context window. As it is essentially how much text can the AI understand at once. Some models,
Mm.
like a basic ChatGPT, have a relatively short context window. So you can upload, for instance, an entire article, but you're not going to be able to upload an entire book because it's too long.
Okay. Yep, yep, yep.
Notebook LM has a huge context window. And in fact, you can
Mm.
upload an entire book if you wanted to. So that's the main appeal of it. Its claim to fame was that based on whatever you upload, articles, your own prompts, books, you can ask it to generate a two-person podcast based on that. It's like a 9 to 10 to 15-minute segment that, for instance, will generate a podcast based on a book that you want to read. And it's a little uncanny because it's very real, or it feels very real. Like an NPR style podcast where you hear two people talking, laughing, um, cracking jokes about a particular book that you want to read. So the main appeal of it to me is when you have a very, very, very long document to read and that you want the too long did not read version. The
Right.
downside of it is that it's not as good at reasoning. So if you want to solve a
Uh,
problem in a particular book, might not be the best solution.
wow. I didn't even know you could do that. That's crazy. Okay, I want to get to this question too from Kathy because this one is super juicy as well. And I also think it's helpful for anybody, any of us who have like a side hustle or who have like a day job and then like jokingly like your second job or your other job. But Kathy says, can AI help with juggling demands of multiple roles? I work full time for one organization, but I'm doing 3 days on CRM implantation and 2 days on my original role as a data officer. Juggling both is pretty intense. So, even though this question is specific to Kathy and her role, I also think that it can it can be a factor for any of us who, are working our corporate job, but also have a side hustle, or who are working at a job, but also decided to volunteer with Habitat for Humanity. So we kind of have these two dueling things looking for our time and attention.
That's a great question. The thing to keep, the main thing to keep in mind with these things is that AI can help you find the most efficient way to tackle different issues in multiple roles. And sometimes that means not being a perfectionist. So there's certain roles that I assume are secondary. It's not your main role, and it's okay if you don't do an excellent job. If you do a good job or a good enough job, well, that's good enough. And AI can help you identify, how can I satisfy the minimum, or just do this work in a satisfactory way without overextending myself. And that's how you identify certain hacks or certain ways to, in the, I guess, productivity jargon, they call it 80-20. How do I find the 20% of things that lead to 80% of outcomes? The downside is that it requires a lot more risk management. Because if you do something more efficiently, you can do it in a satisfactory way, but there are certain types of jobs that a mistake can be very costly. So if you work in insurance, in nuclear engineering, you really want to give your full attention to whatever it is you're doing. There's a problem in AI called the out of the loop problem. And it's when you keep the human out of the loop, the human does not double check the AI's recommendations, the AI output. Most of the time it's fine, but sometimes it can lead to like that case in a lawyer somewhere in the United States where the lawyer was citing a case that essentially does not exist. And that does not make you or your law firm look good. That's precisely the kind of mistakes you want to avoid.
Well, yeah. I mean, I always tell people, one, I use it for myself, but I tell people all the time that you have to think of AI as an intern. And just like you would never send an intern's work unchecked to a client, or you would never send an intern's work unchecked to your boss, that is how you must think of AI. Even though people are like, AI is amazing and it's so smart, it's an amazing, very smart intern. So all that to say, it is still an intern. So you still have to check the intern's work. You would never pass the intern's work off as your own. What about if you do have this kind of dual role in your life, or kind of dual personality going on at work, where you have to kind of think two different ways? What about this point that Jeff is making, but about creating like a different persona for yourself within ChatGPT or within whatever AI that you're using? Do you think something like that would be beneficial, or more so just telling AI kind of everything that you have going on and letting the AI figure it out for itself?
That's a great question. I think essentially, when you give someone context, like when you go to your doctor, and you have some problem, you want to give the doctor enough context for him or her to understand what ails you, but at the same time, you don't want to give your doctor irrelevant context, and so you would not give your doctor the same context every time. And so I think Jeffrey
Right.
has a good point in that it's not so much about creating different personas as much as it's about every time you prompt your AI with context, just make sure the context is actually relevant. For instance, if I'm going to prompt an AI for advice on personal investment, my age is an important factor, because my age from now to until when I retire is, of course, a major determinant of, for instance, how much risk I would be willing to tolerate when it comes to financial investment.
No, definitely. I'm curious. Obviously, you've kind of been in this field for well over a decade now, and probably read countless books. Or it sounds like you use NotebookLM to create podcasts for yourself from countless books. But what are your favorite kind of podcasts or books that either inspire you the most, or you kind of revisit time and time again when it comes to this sort of stuff?
That's a great question. A book that really changed the way I think about productivity and time management is Deep Work by Cal Newport. It's not a book about time management per se, but it's really a book about how to find ways to focus better. Because, like I said, today the main bottleneck is all the information that we have to process. And that's very hard to do when you're constantly being interrupted, when you can't focus for more than 5, 10 minutes, when there's social media notifications. Um, it's really a book about how do I exercise my focus abilities, like going to the gym for focus. And that is, to me, extremely important. In fact, it's the most important thing. The reason why I'm able to be productive most days uh, is because I turn off notifications. It's because I set a dedicated time for deep work, and that is extremely helpful. Now, in terms of podcasts, I have I guess, a confession to make. I don't really listen to that many podcasts. However, one thing that I find personally very useful is whenever I have a conversation with AI about a professional problem or a personal problem, at the end, what I almost always do is, this was very insightful. Thank you. Now, can you please summarize what we just talked about for the past 20 minutes into a speech addressed to myself, a speech that is inspiring, motivational, but of course not, uh, a no fluff, nothing corny, nothing campy, just something accurate, something truthful, but it is also meant to inspire me and motivate me in a constructive way. And so it writes the speech, and I make sure always to ask it, can you please make sure the speech, when narrated, is at least 10 to 15 minutes long? Then what I do is I copy paste the output into this app that I really, really like. It's called 11 Labs. 11 Labs is the leading AI lab that essentially does text to speech. And so it reads the speech out loud. So what I do is I go out for a walk or a bike ride, and at the same time, I listen to a personalized, quote unquote, podcast addressed to me based on personal issues that I've been struggling with. And I don't want to say this out loud, but I find this much better than therapy sessions I've been to, whether it's for professional reasons, for personal reasons, very, very useful. Now, the added bonus that some people might find interesting, that I find personally very interesting, but it's just a detail, is that 11 Labs also has what they call, I think it's called legacy voices, but I'm not sure. Essentially, it's voices of people, of famous people whose voice you really like. And I personally like James Dean and Burt Reynolds. And so listening to something addressed to myself that is meaningful, but also narrated by Burt Reynolds or James Dean, is one of the better experiences I've experienced in my life. I find that very useful personally.
That is, wow. First of all, like mind blown, like mind blowing emoji. Second, I know that Liz had said it earlier, but it kind of, you brought it up again, which is just, AI for mental health. It's almost like you've created a mental pep talk or coach, really, a James Dean motivational pep talk / coach for yourself, which is crazy. But I also wanted to touch on really quickly, you were talking about the ability to kind of focus, and I'm totally going to butcher this because I don't know who exactly said it to me, but it was a friend and we were talking, and she was telling me, if you find yourself incapable of, let's say, running into the grocery store without your phone, or incapable of standing in the Chipotle line without pulling out your phone, or this is the one that I was like, ooh, guilty. If you find yourself watching a TV show, by the way, a TV show that you like, so you've opted to watch this TV show, and you are also on your phone, not during a commercial, but while the TV show is on, the TV show that you like, the TV show that you're opting to watch, it was like intervention. Like, you have a problem. Like, you're a crack addict. Like the phone is an issue. You need to like practice detoxing from it because your attention has become like a goldfish. That even when it's something that you enjoy, a TV show that you picked, that you really like, you literally can't even focus on that. And that's when I was like, oh, I very quickly did a phone detox after that. And I will say it really helped. So I want to second your point, Brad, about really paying attention to your focusing abilities and how, and by the way, I will speak for myself, like that wavers. Like there are some times where I'm really good at focusing and there's other times where I'm really bad at it. Or a month goes by and I was killer and then all of a sudden I'm terrible at it again. So it also is something that I feel like you have to keep revisiting. It's not like oh, I fixed it, pat myself on the back. Everything's perfect now. There's no perfect.
If I may just add something that might be useful. One thing that we know from research that a lot of people probably don't know about is that they imagine people that are able to focus to resist temptation as people who are really good at self-control. That is not true. What we find is that the people that are quote unquote really good at self-control are just better able to avoid temptation in the first place. And they do that by re-engineering their home environment or their work environment to eliminate those temptations. So to give you a simple example, when I was in grad school, I wasn't making a lot of money. And at some point I thought, well, that's an issue. Let's try to, I downloaded an app to track my expenses. And then I was horrified when I learned that I was essentially spending 10% of my annual gross income on pizza slices. So that was a huge wake-up call. And then I thought, well, I don't know, like every time I go to university, I walk by that pizza joint. And so what am I going to do? It's irresistible. Well,
It's irresistible.
I essentially found a different way to get to where I studied. And that's it. And so I was not exposed to that place anymore. And therefore, I did not, I quote unquote resisted temptation. And same thing at home, I don't have cookies. I have an app called Freedom. If you're interested, it's on freedom.to. I think they have a free version. I don't remember. I bought the premium version years and years ago because it's very useful. Essentially, what it does is during predefined times, which are usually my deep work times, it completely blocks my access to social media and certain quote unquote distracting websites like the news, like Amazon during that time. And it's blocked on my desktop computer, my laptop, my iPad, my phone. So there's nothing I can do. And there's even a nuclear option that you can enable so that you can, yeah, I think it's called the nuclear option, where you can't even deactivate that. Essentially, just make it easier for you. Re-engineer your environment where you don't have to force yourself to focus. Focus comes by eliminating interruptions rather than trying to resist them. That's my advice.
No, that's such a good point. I've used Freedom before and it is super helpful and it just helps you again kind of check yourself. I think it's a good checks and balances, but I love this idea of really using AI to help you set those boundaries or to, using Freedom to help you focus more. Have you ever used AI to, set boundaries specifically with our time? So knowing when to stop working or saying no to tasks that don't align with the goals that you've already told AI that you have for that quarter or for that year. I think that this is such a good question to dig into because we all have been faced with, you're kind of in the thick of it, you have a lot going on, but then in my case, someone shows you a sad dog picture and is like, do you want to volunteer, all day on Saturday with these like rescue puppies? And I'm like, yes, of course, we have to save the puppies. And then, I lose a whole day that was supposed to be spent doing, things that I needed to do because I got distracted with a bouncy, shinier opportunity that flew my way. So do you have any kind of advice or thoughts on leveraging AI to really stick to our boundaries or stick to our goals and find a way to say no to things?
Yes. Absolutely. That's a great question. So one thing I would recommend, very practically speaking, is keep an AI chat where you prompt the AI with things that are important to you. So your values, things that you want to achieve in life, but also ongoing projects, just to see how everything fits. Because ultimately, what you want to do in terms of time management is make sure that you put your time where your mouth is, meaning that you want to align your schedule with what actually matters to you. Because otherwise, why spend time on things that are unimportant to you? So once you have that AI chat where it's very explicitly prompted with what matters to you, what's important to you, every time something comes up and you're kind of on the fence, ask the AI like you would ask an oracle, in the ancient Greece days where you would go to an oracle for life advice. Just ask it, hey, uh, someone offered me to join this project. Do you think this fits? Yes or no, given my constraints. Now, and here's where it really matters. The AI will very likely tell you yes or no based on a reasoning or based on a reason. So it gives you a reason why that is or is not a good idea. Because very often people have a hard time saying no because of personality reasons, but very often they have a hard time saying no because they don't know why exactly. So they don't have this opportunity cost in the back of their mind at all times. However, if they know that the alternative is, for instance, not spending more time with their children, not spending more time on this side gig that's very important to them, then of course they're going to say no. And normally they're going to say no, but they're going to give people a reason why. So I'm sorry, this sounds like a very interesting project, but usually on Saturdays I spend time with my kids, or usually on Saturdays I'm developing this yoga business that is super important to me. So when the alternative is clear to you, then of course saying no and choosing between different options is going to be a lot easier. And AI is fantastic for that.
I love that because I feel like that's something that we could all do immediately, because we do know our goals and it is something that's kind of instantly actionable because as we get requests for our time and attention to volunteer somewhere or to take on an extra project or to meet our friends or to go away for the weekend, that's the type of thing that AI can kind of keep you in check with what you say yes to and what you say no to. I love that. I'm curious, Brad, like, so as I kind of said before, we're super nerdy. We love homework around these parts. If you could give us a homework assignment, something that we could start doing over the weekend or maybe during the week, it could be anything. It could be to download something. It could be to try something, listen to something, read something that you think would help us kind of dig deeper into our own time management, into leveraging AI to help us with our productivity, what would be a homework assignment that you would give us for the rest of the week?
That's a great question. I would start with something you're struggling with. So note down anything that is I don't know, like a problem you have at work, something that you're trying to achieve, but for some reason you have a hard time getting started. Start with that. And then spend 15 to 20 minutes trying to prompt an AI, whether it's Claude or ChatGPT, that really doesn't matter. Prompt an AI with a very detailed description of who you are. So my name is XYZ. I'm, I don't know, 40 years old. Um, my personality is such and such. Here are my goals in life. This is what I value. And now here's my problem. But don't ask it for a solution just yet. Ask it, what am I not thinking of? And that
Mm,
to me is the ultimate prompt for anything I do, whether I'm exploring how to solve a problem, um, how to brainstorm ideas for a project. After a while, my go-to prompt is always, what am I not thinking of? And here's why it's so important. As human beings, we know a certain amount of things, but there's a lot we don't know. And those are the unknown unknowns. There's a lot of things about time, for instance, that I don't even know that I don't know. And I think I'm an expert on the topic. And so the difference between you and the AI is that the AI has been trained on a huge amount of data, huge. And so it knows a lot more than you do. It might not be smarter than you, but it certainly knows a lot more than you do. and you can take advantage of that. So once the AI has an idea of who you are and how you think, it can also reveal your blind spots and tell you things like,
Mm.
hey, it's great that you're focusing on XYZ, but have you thought of this other thing that might be super interesting to you? That I find is one of the best use cases of AI.
I love that. And that's something that we can all start doing today, which is really digging in with AI and saying, what am I not thinking of? What did I miss here? I love that. Well, Brad, this was so wonderful and really super duper helpful. If people want to keep leaning in and learning from you and really just soaking up more of your goodness, where is the best place for them to do that?
Mostly LinkedIn. I many years ago, I decided to share new insights, mostly from research, so new studies on productivity on AI, and most importantly, what that means for you in terms of practical tips you can implement right away to be more productive, to feel more in control of your time. I do that Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday on LinkedIn, so you can follow me. My name is Brad Aeon. That's Aeon on LinkedIn, but also Instagram. X and Facebook, if those are your preferred social media channels.
I love it. Thank you so, so much. I feel like we tried really hard to get to all the questions, but there were so many good pizza questions also coming up towards the end. I feel like once we all heard pizza with like squirrel, we all went to the pizza. But this was so fun, Brad. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. It's my pleasure. And thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you guys for taking time out of your day to sit down and learn with Brad and I. This was so much fun. You had so many good questions. I'm sorry we couldn't get to them all, but I know that we have a lot of homework to look into, apps to look into. I'm going to look into that NotebookLM. We got a lot to kind of dig in on freedom, etc. So thank you so much for your time and attention and for being here with us. If you are new here and you want to keep coming back, do what Brad said, which is to set up time in your calendar. And you can do that by going to getcoffeewithkim.com. We send you a little calendar invite. That way you make sure not to miss it. It has the link. It kind of takes care of you. And that's what we're all about here. So thank you so much for being here with us. We will see you next Wednesday, same time, same place, 1 p.m. Eastern here on LinkedIn Live or any of your favorite podcast channels if you get a little busy. So until then, have a beautiful rest of the weekend and we will see you soon. Take care.